It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, which is presented by Alumni Hall. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of Seminole Sidelines. I am joined today by Osceola publisher Jerry Cutts, former FSU football players Mark Salva and Bill Reagan, and former FSU linebacker coach Wally Burnham. Well, guys, I want to thank you for joining me for a very special episode of Seminole Sidelines, where we are celebrating the life of Coach Bobby Bowden, who passed away on Sunday after a battle with pancreatic cancer. Obviously, he is a gentleman that impacted all four of you guys immensely. He was a man that won a lot of football games, 377 wins, a lot of championships, including 2 national titles and countless ACC championships. But more than that, he won over tens of thousands of FSU fans and college football fans alike. And along the way, also impacted the lives of players and coaches for over 5 decades. A man that obviously I associate not only with Tallahassee, but Florida State. And a gentleman that I got to be around since I was 15 years old, and someone that was a hero to me, and someone that I had started hearing about from my father, who was on this call when I was about 10 years old, and someone that will be sorely missed. I pass by his house every day, and it'll, obviously Sunday was a very sad day at the practice field and in Kelowna and in Tallahassee in the whole. But, you guys were directly impacted by Coach Bowden, and kind of just want to go around the room, guys, and get your thoughts on what he meant to you, what he will mean to you guys moving forward. And, Jerry, I want to start with you.
Okay, thanks, Pat. I first got involved with Coach Bowden as I had just graduated from Florida State, and I was selling computers down in Orlando when they announced him as our head coach. And I didn't know much about him from West Virginia. And I remember the Baptist Church in Orlando announced that he would be their guest speaker at SeaWorld for Easter sunrise service. So my wife and I skipped our Sunday Mass and went down there and heard Coach Bowden speak probably for the first time. And he gave a profound message of salvation, being Easter service. And that was my first impression. And I kind of wondered, is this guy genuine? Is this guy, does he walk the walk, walk the talk, I guess. And, later I came to start the Osceola in 1981. We came to Coach Bowden and asked him if he'd like to have a publication, and he did. They had one a few years earlier. It had failed, and he wanted to be sure that we had a chance to succeed. And he went out of his way for us every day. Any way that he could accommodate us, he did. And I can remember the strangest thing to me, Wally, and you were there, but on Monday morning, if the Osceola was not on his desk, I would get a phone call from Sue Hall. Actually, my wife would. And one of us would have to run one over there. And I never understood that. And I said, Coach, why is the Osceola important to you? And, why is it that you need to read it every Monday morning? And he said, because my players will tell you guys things they won't tell me.
That's true. Mark.
all that access that he gave Osceola was purposeful. He'd let us get in the locker room and interview people. And I think that guy had his finger on the pulse in ways that are way above my pay grade. But that was my first experiences with him, was as a publisher. And then later, when I went to work for Seminole Boosters, I'd sold the Osceola there in 99 and bought it back in 2019. But in between then, I was working at the Boosters, and we did the Bobby Bowden tour. I know all you guys seen it and experienced it. Well, I saw it for 20 years, and countless fans. He would play golf with them. He would sign autographs with them. The guy was just, it's hard to explain how giving of his time. I know every one of y'all are going to talk about that. There's an element that one of the players talked about with me. It was Sammy Smith was talking about the closer to God you get, the more humble you become. And he said, I don't know of a person that was closer to God than Bobby. And, I witnessed that as you all did in his walk. And I mentioned this on another podcast. We were playing golf somewhere and warming, he was getting putting on the putting green. And this Gator fan comes walking up in full Gator garb. And he had a little boy with him, and it was his grandson. And he wanted Bobby and his grandson to meet. And he explained to Bobby, he says, I'm a Gator fan, but you're the role model I want my son to have. You're the guy. And the guy had an old van, and on the back of it, he had a brand new tire cover. And it was the 96 national championship when we played them, and they beat us over there in the Sugar Bowl. And I figured that had to be the most painful, bitter loss in Bobby Bowden's career. And he said to that little boy, would you go into the gift shop there and ask them for a magic marker? And when they came out, Bobby asked the man, the Gator fan, would you mind if I autographed your tire cover? Now, to me, that is the ultimate of humility,
Yeah.
And so, the guy was, to me, was a guy you admire, you try to learn from, and he shaped me. I didn't play for him, but he shaped me by challenging my standard for myself. So you guys, I'd like for you guys to share your experiences, because yours were much more intense than mine were.
Well, Coach Burnham, or as I like to call you, Dad, but I'll call you Coach Burnham for the purposes of this particular call. You have a rather unique relationship with Coach Bowden. You guys have similar upbringings. Y'all are both born and raised around the Birmingham area. Both went to Alabama on scholarship as football players. Both became All-Americans at Samford University and were actually inducted into the Samford Hall of Fame on the same night. And then, of course, you have a 9-year career coaching for him and producing 2 Buckus Award winners. And but just tell us about your relationship. When did you first meeting Coach Bowden? And I can still remember when I was 10 years old watching, I believe it was the Oklahoma Florida State Orange Bowl, and you telling me that if you could ever coach for any one man, I never heard you say that about a coach before, that you wanted to coach for somebody, that would be the guy you would want to coach for. And ultimately, 5 years later, it did come true. But just kind of talk to us about how you met Coach Bowden and how your relationship went with him over the course of both of your lifetimes, obviously, and what he meant to you as a coach and as a person.
Well, Pat, all you guys here tonight, we've all had a week of reflection. Many thoughts have gone through our minds, what's left of mine. And, I first met Coach Bowden in 1962. He was the head coach at Samford University. And I was kind of evaluating schools to go after I left Alabama. I didn't play football in 62. And so I had some offers out there. So one day I got a call from Bobby Bowden. I knew it was at Sanford or Howard at that time because they used to come up to Pell City and scrimmage on our football field because they were in camp down at a Methodist school not too far from Pell City, and they'd come up there and have a couple of scrimmages during preseason. So I didn't get to meet him or know him, but I knew who he was from him being there. But anyway, I got a call one day. It was about signing time, and of course, back in those, the signing rules were so loose. You get outside the SEC, you could probably go anywhere you wanted to, the next day if you transferred. And so anyway, I got a call, and he started talking about himself and about my being from Pell City, blah, blah, all this kind of stuff. And he said, "I tell you what," he said, "if you'll come over here and visit with me, I'll pay you gas and buy you food." So I talked it over with my mom and dad, and sure enough, I went up there, spent the weekend. He put me up in a motel, I guess. I don't even know where it was, and invited me over to his house the next day. And I walk in the house, and there's kids everywhere. I mean, this is 1962, and so we had a nice visit. And I said, "Coach, I'll let you know in a day or two. I'm going to go back to Pensacola, where my folks were living at that time." And so I did. And so I called him up in a few days and accepted the scholarship, and ended up going to Howard back in those days. But when I got there in January, I walked into the secretary's office, and I introduced myself, and I said, I need to speak to Coach Bowden. That lady looked at me like I had two heads. And she said, "Son, he doesn't work here anymore." I like to fight it, And he had gone to Florida State as the wide receiver coach. He didn't call me. I don't guess he called it. He just didn't do things back in those days. Whatever was there at Sanford was going to be there. And anyway, so that was my introduction to Coach Bobby Bowden. And it was a great thing that I did go there, because our paths crossed many times. I visited down there during spring practices on several occasions. And I remember one year I was down there visiting. Pat, we were on summer vacation, and we was out in Arizona. And we go by practice, and I take you and Shane out there, and your mom walks out. But anyway, I'll get to more of that later if we have time. But I was about to leave practice, and he said, "Wally," he said, "the next time I have a chance to hire you, I'm going to hire you." Well, the next year he hires me. And so that's kind of my introduction to Coach Bowden. And the thing that I have thought more about this week than anything else was how he affected me and my family and countless other families. But I saw it firsthand. I experienced it firsthand with my own family, with other coaches and their families. But the first thing I thought about the other day, I said, okay, I want to think about Coach Bowden. I want to remember the first staff meeting that I ever went to. So I sat down in my chair, which I stay in most of the time, visiting town, and I started thinking, okay, the first thing I remember, when I first got there, we were out in the middle of recruiting. So we didn't have staff meetings. Yeah, we had recruiting meetings, but we didn't have a football staff meeting. So we went through the recruiting and everything. And so we have our first staff meeting after I get there. And the thing that jumped out to me the other day was we started the meeting off with a devotion. I'd been coaching a long time, and I had never been around that in my life. That was the first thing that jumped out at me a couple of mornings ago. Then I started reflecting, and if I need to stop, just tell me if you're going to get into some of this other stuff. I don't want to take anybody's time, but, that was very meaningful to me. And Some of them are serious devotions. Some of them are funny devotions. You guys that were GAs, y'all know, y'all sat in on some of them. And some of them are, okay, I'm going to read the Bible here and say a little prayer. And so we had all kind of things. We had all kind of personalities in that room. But anyway, that was one of the first things that came to my mind. And then there's a lot of things family-wise that if we have time, I'll talk about. That those are the things I started thinking about when I found out Coach Bowden had died and passed away.
Mark, what about, and obviously, as Coach Burnham just said, Mark and Bill both spent time not only as players, but as GAs for Coach Bowden, started their coaching career at Florida State. Mark, just talk about the impact he had on you. I know we've talked about it before, but please feel free to share those stories again.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Bowden was the rarest of men, right? He's a leader that did it the right way. And I got 3 stories I think that can illustrate this. The first one was when I was getting recruited. I was a marginal guy coming out in 1984 anyways. I was a 6'1", 260-pound defensive lineman, halfway decent athlete, but still just not, I wasn't a prime guy. Of course, I played with a prime guy named Paul McGowan. So everybody came to watch Paul, and they just happened to see me there too, right? So I got recruited by Miami a little bit, but they dropped off at the end when Mike Archer went to LSU. And so I took my official visit with Paul to Tallahassee. Well, in 1984, the USA Today Defensive Player of the Year was a guy named Ron Stallworth. And he was a 6'5", 275-pound, good-looking textbook defensive lineman. And he had it down between Auburn and Florida State. And when I took my official visit, I remember sitting in Coach Bowden's office. And my mama and dad were there, and he said, "Now, Mark," he goes, "I got one scholarship left for a defensive lineman." He said, "And I'm holding that for Ron." He said, "If Ron goes to Auburn, I'll give you that scholarship. But if he comes to Florida State, I'm not going to have one for you." I said, "Coach, thanks for being honest." I left that day and took a trip to Eastern Kentucky because that was my next best school that I had a chance at. I got back from that Eastern Kentucky trip. Jim Gladden's on the phone when I walk in. He says, "Ron Stallworth went to Auburn. Do you want to?" "Yes." So only later when I was coaching, sitting around shooting the crap with, I guess this is the year before you got there when I was getting recruited, but I can't remember who it was telling me, do you know what happened that Sunday recruiting me? I said, "No, I never heard this before." He said, "That recruiting meeting, there was some discussion about whether or not to give me that scholarship. We can get this guy who's this, we can get that guy who's that. We can get some elite guys here and there." And there's some discussion in the room. And apparently Coach Bowden stopped him right there. And they said, "Men, I told that boy that I would give him that scholarship, and that's what we're going to do." So first of all, he was a man of integrity, right? Second story was in 1985, after we beat Nebraska, my mom had cancer. And she had cancer, diagnosed in 1980. So I always told her, if she made 5 years, she'll make 20. And guys will tell you in the locker room that week when I hit the 5-year mark, I was through the moon. And we were getting ready to play Nebraska. We beat Nebraska, and I played really well. I had one of the best games probably ever played, and played real well. And we won big and got back late and everything. I called my mom on Sunday, and turns out she had been in the hospital that whole week and didn't tell me because she didn't want to interrupt my preparation for the game. A couple of weeks later, I'm walking out to the field, and Coach Bowden met me right under that enthusiasm sign and put his arm around me and said, "Son, you need to go home. You need to go see Sue and call home." I immediately knew what it was about. Obviously, my mom had passed. And Coach had arranged that night, Sue goes, "Go pack a bag. We'll get you home to Orlando." And, probably broke a rule or something, but Coach arranged for me to fly home on the state plane that night. And just the love and the compassion that he showed me and that Sue showed me that day, I'll never forget. And, Paul called me a couple of days ago, says, "I remember," because Coach took Paul, my high school teammate and roommate, and later that week and flew, I guess they flew after practice to my mom's funeral and flew back, So the second thing is he did it with compassion. He didn't do it through intimidation. He didn't do it through trying to scare you. He did it through compassion. That's how he motivated you. And then the last one was when I was a GA. Back when I was a GA, you could only be a GA for 2 years. So I was a GA for the 90-91 season. And after 91 season, I was out of time. And I was obviously looking for a job real diligently and never really landed anything that appealed to me. So I started looking at high school jobs, and I interviewed with Sonny Smart at Bay Ridge, Georgia, which is Kirby Smart's dad, right? And I came back, and Sonny wanted to hire me at Bay Ridge, and I walked back to Coach Bowden and tell him, I said, Coach, I'm going to go coach high school football. He looks at me, he goes, no, you're not. He said, we will find a place for you here. You're going to stay here. And I think I might have been one of the first, quote unquote, analysts, right, in college football, because he invented a spot for me as a quote unquote strength coach. And I broke down film and I filmed practice, and I got to hang around that 92 season. And then in 93, NCAA said you can be a GA for a third year, and I was able to stay on. So the third part of that was that he believed in me unequivocally, more than I probably believed in myself, and he projects that to all his players. If you're one of his boys, he will go to the moon for you, right? He believes in you. And, those are just 3 stories. I got plenty more. But here's the thing. All the guys I've talked to this week, everybody has those stories, right? And, it's just the difference, just the leadership that he shows, the way he did it. But more than that, he modeled what a godly man looks like. That you can be, my wife said the best. You can be a fierce competitor and you can pursue Christ fiercely in the same body, in the same life. And that was something that I'd never really experienced before, and he showed me how to do that. And I try to honor that to this day. I know I fall short, but those are just the 3 things that I kind of just illustrates who he was to me and how he got it done.
Well, Bill, you grew up about 90 miles east of Tallahassee in Live Oak, and I believe you came from a Florida family, didn't you? And
yeah,
I think everybody's been converted now, right? I don't think you got any Florida people left in your family. Tell us kind of about your road to FSU, and obviously your interactions with Coach Bowden and what he meant to you, and not only as a young man, but now as a father and husband.
Well, I mean, growing up in Live Oak, it was half Gators, half Seminoles. My whole family, we used to go to Gator games every Saturday till like my junior year, and then I started getting recruited a little bit, and that whole process picked up. I was getting recruited like Mark, kind of from some small schools, Western Kentucky, Citadel, Georgia Southern, Valdosta State, and Florida State. So for me, it was a no-brainer when we played my last football game. My senior year was a bowl game inside the track that I believe your dad and Coach Gladden, Coach Andrews, and a bunch of the guys were at. We got our tail tore up, but I played pretty good against Bay High School. And then Coach Andrews came and watched me play basketball, and I was pretty good. Like Mark said, I was a pretty good athlete, and they had to take a chance. I'm sure I was the last guy that they offered, but it worked out for me, and I'm eternally grateful. It changed my life, to say the least. And then to have a chance to coach with Coach Bowden and be around him, and like Coach Burnham said, devotions every morning, and just the way he handled himself and us.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we'll
just,
take a
is how you affected me as a person, and want to be a better person, husband, father, friend, teammate. Even when I was playing, he just brought the best out of me. And yeah.
Well, Yeah, he certainly. I think there was probably a lot of us have been doing that, Bill. As you and I text on Sunday, it's probably a good thing that that he evokes that kind of emotion out of people that had a chance to be around him. I mean, it says a lot about the kind of man he was, that he could still elicit that kind of emotion and response from a bunch of guys that are starting to get old quick. Now, listen. I think Coach Bowden is one of those guys that would obviously would appreciate the tears, but would respect the laughter more, right? I don't think there's any doubt that he would want us to be celebrating his life. And to me, he's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And, his induction, I wish I could do the induction speech at Sanford justice, but he never lost his ability to deliver a line. A lot of times I've spent the last 48, 72 hours thinking about Coach Bowden. It's just how funny he was. And, of course, now you guys saw a different side to him because you guys got moved behind closed doors. But, Dad, I know you guys had some unique recruiting trips that has some humor involved in them. And I know you've shared those on Happy Hour. I don't think you've ever shared any on a podcast. But, I know there was a famous one. Y'all were down in Polk County and y'all had to run to a clothing store. Can you share that one with us?
Yeah, we were down there recruiting and had a home visit. And I think it was James Robinson that we were going to visit with that night and his family. But anyway, I'm driving Coach around. We're going to all the high schools, like you do when you got the head guy with you. And so you take them to the schools, you're doing the best job recruiting, And so anyway, we're stopping to get a Coke. And packing, he called them nabs. That's where I learned how to call crackers nabs. And anyway, so we stop, and for some reason, he has to bend over. And his pants split wide open. And he runs the car, and he say, we got to go get me some pants. He said, I don't know when anybody can sew them up around here. I said, I don't either, Coach. So anyway, he wrapped his jacket, his sport coat around him a little bit, and we went in, I think it was a Sears. Heck, I can't remember. And he bought him a new pair of pants, and we continued on, and had a good visit because we got whoever it was. I think it was James Robinson. Then the scariest I've ever been about my job at Florida State was we were recruiting a kid in Naples. And not Naples, Fort Myers. I can't remember the high school now. Anyway, so I get this official visit set up. And we're going to fly in on Saturday morning. We had a bunch of recruits in on that weekend. So I said, but Coach Bowden, he's going to go visit Notre Dame if we don't go soon. He said, we'll go Saturday morning. So we got up at 5 o'clock and we flew to Fort Myers, and we go to the house and go up, and I start to knock. And I see this note. And it's from his mom saying, Coach Burnham said, sorry, we're not here, but I can't think of the kid's name.
Pete. It was Pete something.
Yeah. Pete is going to Notre Dame.
Pete Patton?
No, not Pete Patton.
No. His is a big old offensive lineman. He was a great player in high school. Anyway, so I turn around, and of course, Coach Bowden's behind me because I knocked on the door and all those kind of things. And I said, Coach, and I took the note off the door, and I said, you want to read this? He read it, handed it back to me, and turned around and walked back down the stairs. And I said, I am fired, no doubt. I might have to walk back to Tallahassee. He never spoke another word from the time we got left that front porch until we got out of the plane. He got his car, I got my car. We came to Moore Center for, where all the recruits were and their parents. And so later that day, we happened to run into each other somewhere in the building. He said, "Well, don't worry about that." He said, "You couldn't have any idea that kid and his mother were going to do that to you." He said, "They didn't even call you. They didn't do anything. So you don't worry about it." That's the last time it was ever mentioned. So I knew he had forgiveness in his heart. But I thought I was going to lose my job on that one. But a lot of people would have. But you didn't have phones like you do today, and the kid was going to obey his mom. I guess she's the one that wanted him to go to Notre Dame more than he was. But anyway, that was quite a deal.
Mark, what about you? You got any? Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, all those guys in the staff meetings and stuff were just hilarious. But Mark, I believe may have been in there, and Coach Burnham, Coach Bowden had the little skin that would lay over his eyes, kind of, and he had them lifted a little bit, and he was in the hideaway meeting one year with patches on his eyes, and everybody. We were in there and we were trying to go over stuff, and he couldn't see anybody. And everybody was kind of going over. Coach Burnham was talking about the linebackers and whoever, Coach Andrew. And somebody got to giggling, and it turned into the biggest laugh fest. And Coach Bowden really didn't know what everybody was laughing about at first, but it was funny as all outdoors. I felt like as a player, you were kind of standoffish and didn't really, Coach Bowden was not an intimidating man, but a hard man to approach just with his stature and the way he carried himself, But I got in there as a graduate assistant, and you see, they're just regular guys, and it put me at ease a lot around him. And then you can start reflecting on the things you learned from him, even as a player, that you didn't realize, that you pay attention to. Remember different speeches and things he had told our whole team or whatever. And it was interesting to get to know the coaches and Coach Bowden and those guys in a different way, from being a player and coach to both, when I was a GA, and get to know those guys.
So I heard a couple of good ones today at lunch. I was with Mickey Andrews and Jim Gladden and some of the other fellas, and they got talking about Shelton Cruz, and they got talking about a coaching clinic, Bill, a high school coaching clinic that Bobby spoke at down, I guess it was in Daytona back then. And not very many head coaches, I guess, took their time to speak at those banquets, or clinics. But at any rate, he had given his speech. And you guys probably remember that Bobby Bowden could draw a stick man better than anybody in the world. The little stick figures. Yeah. And when he draw like a football player, they'd have the ball tucked under their arm and their arms moving, legs bent. You remember that, Wally?
I do.
Coach Bowden.
He could draw a stick figure.
He could draw really good. So they're at the clinic. And Florida State, I think, led the country that year in fewest fumbles. And so one of the coaches asked Coach Bowden to give him, what kind of drills do you run, that keeps your turnover ratio low. So Bobby got up on probably a chalkboard back then, not a grease board, and he drew a football field. I mean, the whole outline of the field. He wrote Seminoles on one end zone and Gators on the other. He put the hash marks in. He drew a bench. He drew a guy over there on the sideline that he wrote me. And then he drew the formation, and he drew a football on the field. And he said, okay, that is a fumble. And that he took that guy who fumbled it, the stick figure who fumbled it, and he drew a dotted line over to the bench next to him. And he drew another guy coming off the bench going, and he said, that's that's the drill you run. You know, if a guy fumbles, he comes and sits next to me. But that's the. You guys remember that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had Sammy Smith, and if Sammy Smith fumbled, Dexter Carter was in like now.
Yeah.
Get him out of the game. That was the cry. Yeah. I had,
but you know, the wit and wisdom. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. So one time I was a GA. It was after practice, and this is back when we had those crappy, those crazy little starter jackets, right? We were a starter team back then, and we had a starter rep that kind of hung around the equipment room and whatnot. So this is after practice, and the starter rep is hanging around Dave Delagal and Jimmy Callaway out there, and I just happened to be in that little lounge area, and the starter rep's name was Buddy, right? So you know where this is going. And so Coach Bowden comes moseying off for practice after he's talked to the media, right? And he's coming in, he's spinning his whistle on this thing, and he looks over there, and this the guy goes, "Hey, buddy," keeps on walking to the locker room. The guy's just like, "Oh my gosh, he knows my name." And then
it's
go ahead. I was going to say, so
go ahead,
being in the box, you know, you're on the headset, so you hear all kinds of things, all these headsets. And I don't remember the game, and this probably happened more than once, but I just, you know, back when Coach was calling the plays, they're really involved in play calling. He's on the headphones, and we're in the middle of the game. And he's like, okay. I want to run 57 here, run 57. And Mark and Brad, and we look at each other, we're like, Coach, we don't have a 57. They sure didn't practice a 57. He's, I'm at 34 better. I called it 57 at South Georgia College. So, one time, I heard this story. This is secondhand, but it was, he'd always, we'd run a toss sweep, and every time you ran a toss sweep, is the reverse there? Is the reverse there? Is the reverse there? And so he said, one time when Bob Harbison was coaching, he was on the headsets upstairs, and he ran toss sweep and says the reverse there. And Harvey's like, "Hell, I don't know, Coach. Run it and find out." Okay, let's do it.
I'll never will forget the game. I think it was Tulane. We were beating the crap out of somebody. So McDuffie leaves at the end of the third quarter. And Coach Bowden looking for him on the phone, And Mark, you might have been upstairs today. No, you're probably.
No, I was probably playing on this one.
Yeah. Anyway, so he'd call up there, Wayne. And I don't know who had Dwayne's headphone. They say, "Coach, he's going to the bathroom. He's got an upset stomach or something." So play go on. We'd go through it, and Wayne. And the guy was on his headphone from Wayne. "Coach, he's still in the bathroom." So he never asked Wayne about that, or he didn't know Wayne. Wayne went home and watched the rest of the game on TV. Now, nobody else would have enough guts to do that.
Coach Bowden. A lot of the people listening to this probably heard Coach Bowden speak at a lot of booster banquets or Monday luncheons, and he was spectacular. I mean, I honestly believe the guy could have been a stand-up comedian if he hadn't been a football coach. His sense of comedic timing was unbelievable, and Ann was usually the brunt of his booster banquet jokes. And I remember he had one introduction one time. He said, when I was a little boy, my mom would put me to bed. She'd read me a story. And she says, "Now, Bobby, turn the light out and go to sleep or the boogeyman will get you." And he said, when I got to be a teenager, she'd say, "Bobby, get in before the street lamps go on." Remember that, Wally? You had to be in by the time the street lamps came in. And he said, I spent my whole childhood wondering who the boogeyman is. I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Ann.
Well, at the Sanford Hall of Fame induction, which is it's on YouTube, you can find it. Miss Ann was the foil in that joke too, and I can't do it justice. I'm not near as funny as Coach Bowden. I'm not really funny at all, but anyway. So the story is kind of like this: he had gone to Alabama. Obviously, Miss Ann was still in high school, and word had got back to him that she had a lot of callers. That a lot of the boys knew Coach Bowden had gone off to school, and so they had started expressing interest in Miss Bowden. So Coach Bowden said, he thought he had to call back home and make a big play for Miss Bowden. So he got him, saved up his money and put the money in the payphone and called and asked if he could speak to Miss Bowden or Miss Ann. So they went and got Miss Ann, and so she jumps on the phone and she goes, "This is Ann." And Coach Bowden goes, "I just want to call. I just want to call and see if I want to ask you to marry me." And she goes, "Yes. Who is this?" But you got to watch him tell it. I mean, there were about 500 people at that induction ceremony. I think most of us fell out of our seats. But anyway, it's on YouTube, and just like I said, every time I think of him, I think about how funny he was, and it's. I remember being around the facility as a kid, and when Dad would take us to work, even going back to my youngest days at North Alabama, when Coach Andrews was the head coach at North Alabama. And Dad would say, "All right, you can be anywhere you want around the building, but if you see the head man, make yourself scarce. Go somewhere, go to the gym, go to somewhere he's not." So Coach Bowden would sometimes walk down those stairs and come sit in that atrium, or go grab him some lunch and whatever. He very rarely saw him out, but when I saw him coming down the stairs, I'd hightail it out of there because I did not want to. Like you said, Bill, you're kind of intimidated by his status. I'm 15 years old. And so, to get to know him as an older, as I turned into an adult and, got to spend some time around him. And, especially since I moved back to Tallahassee, I'd run into him regularly when I first moved back to Tallahassee at the sink store or the golf course or wherever. And it's just hard to believe that, I was ever intimidated by that man who was so nice. But when he was, when I was a kid, I just stayed out of the way. But anyway, he, every time I think about him, I smile. But anyway, I'll miss him tremendously. Like I said, I live a half mile from his house. It was very awkward on Sunday going by his house. And then, of course, I still remember the time I got to cut his grass. I was needing some gas money. Dad would pay for the car. And the insurance, but he wouldn't pay for gas or dates. So I was always trying to figure out a way to make money during the summer and during football season. And so somehow whoever cut their grass could not cut their grass. So they called and asked if I wanted to do it. Well, growing up, whenever I cut Dad's grass, there was always an inspection just to make sure I didn't leave that one sliver line down somewhere in the middle of the yard. And so, I was a teenager, about half the time, he'd find that little sliver of grass and, I'd get ripped for it. So, he told me in no certain terms that, hey, when you go there, make sure you do a good job. And I think I cut the Bowden's grass twice that day, just to make sure that little sliver of grass, that little blade of grass that shouldn't have been standing up was standing up. But anyway.
You learned well.
What's that?
You learned well.
Yeah, I did.
The thing that was amazing about Bowden's humor for me was that, every day when the press would meet with him, or whether it was a Monday luncheon or a booster meeting that was open to people questioning and answers, he was so sharp. It was so unscripted, his humor. He could take a question that somebody asked and flip it into something hysterical. And Mark and Wally and Bill, I'm sure you guys saw him do that. A thing that one of the moments I remember, probably you all probably saw it. You remember the year ESPN gave us, we won the award for the team of the decade in the 90s. And Bobby flew out to Vegas to receive this award. And Rob Wilson accompanied them and wanted to see if Bobby wanted to run his speech by him. And Bobby said, "No, I got it. I don't have it yet, but I'll get it." And so they do the whole banquet, and Bobby dozed off. The banquet was so late. By the time they put Bobby on, it was almost midnight Eastern time. And he got up there and he said as best I can remember it, he thanked them. He says, "Boy," he said, "we're so excited to be here to receive this award. The team of the decade. That's a big deal." And he says, Ann was so excited. She packing her bags. Then he pauses, comedic pause, and says, Ann, I left her somewhere. I lost Ann. And they went to break, and Rob Wilson said, when the place was up for grabs, Michael Jordan's coming over there and high-fiving them, and, Magic Johnson. I mean, every celebrity in that banquet, just adored Coach Bowden, and he had them in stitches. And when Chris Berman, I guess it was, came back, after the commercial break, they were all still laughing, including Berman. He goes, "Bobby, we found Ann. She's in the Atlanta airport." And, but that was his speech. And you know what that was? That was an exercise in humility, because he could have got up there and bragged on himself. But he just thanked
the thing about him. That's the thing about him. The older I get, me in corporate America, exposed to a lot of different kinds of leaders and people in leadership positions, and even trying to lead a team myself. He's such a rare gift. At the time, I probably took it for granted. We probably all did. While you've worked for a lot of different guys and you've been in a lot of different places, and when I left Florida State to go someplace else, it was such a special culture that he built that will never be repeated for a lot of reasons, but most of all because of him, because of what a rare leader he was. And I'm just blessed to have been just a small part of it.
Yeah, you could duplicate everything but him, right, Mark? I mean, everything else you could do, but if you didn't have him, it wasn't going to be the same.
That's right. You could try to replicate
Mark,
it. Yeah.
I keep saying something that I just want to debate a little bit here. I keep seeing that Bobby is gone and he will never be replaced. And I take I'd like to debate that a little bit. You see that in about every article that, Bobby is gone and he'll never be replaced. But in my estimation, he lives on in you guys, you got a little piece of him, each of you. And so he's not really gone. He's just multiplied.
No question.
Someone asked me it. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he will live on for generations. You think about the impact he's had on you and Bill and Mark, and then the impact he's had on your kids and Bill's kids and Mark's family, and Bill's family, and your family. I mean, it's just, and he's impacted so many people. We'll be talking about him the same way we talk about Bear Bryant. I mean, in this house, in my house, Bear Bryant's still alive. I mean, we still talk about Bear Bryant all the time, football, and we'll talk about Coach Bowden all the time. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, someone, a coach called me the other day, a college coach, and, said, I hate to hear it. And I know all you guys have to go through this, even though you knew it was going to happen. And I said, yeah. I said, you know what, though? we'll never be without him, kind of something that Jerry was alluding to. Anybody that ever worked for him, worked with him, coached, played for him, he touched us some way. You know, some of us in more ways than others. But I feel, and I'm sure you guys do too, I feel like I still got part of Coach Bowden. And my heart and my soul and my whatever it is, I'll never be without Coach Bowden. And besides my dad, that's the only other person in the world that I've ever felt that way about, you know, a grown man. You know, I've had cousins, uncles, and things like that I thought the world of, but, you know, to me, Coach was just, he got inside you, and when he left whatever he put inside you with you. And he went on to where he's been trying to get for 91 years.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
How has it affected your coaching, Reagan?
Well, I mean,
how does some of the
I'm sitting here, you know, looking at Coach Burnham and thinking about how they've impacted me as a player when they coach me, and the way I coach as well in, you know, like my position and coaching kids individually, but then the way when I'm trying to, you know, affect them as people and change their life. I mean, everything, you know, I want to see kids do well because, man, that's all you ever heard Coach Bowden talk about. He always wanted to see you do the right thing or become the best you can be. And I you know, that, like you said, is going to be, and everybody that ever played for him has something in them that they share with somebody daily. I mean, me teaching and talking to kids, the things that Coach Bowden instilled in me, I try to do the same thing with kids every day, whether it's our players or my students. I want to see them all do well and hope they're, you know, having, you know, character and instilling character in them and integrity, and try to teach them all the things that I learned. And I was fortunate enough to learn from some great ones.
Do you blow the whistle and say on your belly, on your back?
No, but I giggle about it sometimes. On your belly, on your back,
on your belly, on your belly. Only he can make it a team discipline, not comedic. Just, you know, what was it? A locker room issue? I think, you know,
yeah.
we had a picture in the corner of our lockers that the locker had to be exactly the same every day. When you got there and when you left it, you had to leave it perfect. And some guys were getting slack on it, and we were warned, and it was still getting slack. So one day after practice, Coach Bowden said his piece. He says, "Now about the locker room, everybody get in a circle." Uh-oh. And he stood in that circle, and all right, move your feet. You better move, chop their feet. And he'd say, "On your belly, blow the whistle. On your back, blow the whistle." And I don't know, we must have did it for 30 minutes. On your belly, on your back, on your belly, oh my gosh.
They thought it was funny at first.
At first it was funny, but after about 30 minutes, it wasn't very funny.
Yeah, the way he was saying it, on your belly, on your back, on your feet. On your belly, on your back, on your feet. Everybody was kind of giggling for, you know, like I said, first 15 minutes. But boy, at the end, it was a long time before we had to do those again.
I bet it was.
The locker room was right after that, though.
Hey, one last thing. We talk about the wit of Bobby Bowden, and wisdom is the other word that comes into my mind. He made things simple, didn't he? He had common sense that was simple and easy to follow, wasn't it?
As far as the coaching part of it, yes. It was there, you know, if you had, and he told us one day, we had someone, I don't know who it was, late for a staff meeting. And so when that person came in, he dismissed the staff. We didn't have a staff meeting. So the next day, we have staff meeting, and everybody's there at 8 o'clock or whatever time. Most of ours started at 8. And he looked around and he looked at every one of us, how he could point that finger and make you feel like hell. And he said, "Men, when I say 8 o'clock, that means 7:55 for you guys. I don't want it to ever happen again." Well, that was a form of leadership. He could have raised hell and stomped and whatever he wanted to do, but he had a way of reaching, and nobody was ever late again in the 9 years I was there. I'll tell you that. And but that was a form of I'm gonna make y'all feel like crap, and y'all go on. I'll meet with y'all individually as the offense and the defense, and that's what he did that day. He came to our staff room and he went to the offensive staff room, and of course he lived in the offensive staff room anyway. So it was. He had a lot of different ways to get to you. As an individual, as a group. I'll never forget in '87, we go to Birmingham to play in the All-American Bowl. You guys remember that?
86, yeah.
86.
Okay.
86, yeah.
Okay.
I turned 18 at that bowl game on that day.
Okay.
And I'm sure you
had a cold day.
I did. Rainy and cold.
Sleet and everything. And we won the game, and, it wasn't a very exciting game. They didn't want to be there. Our guys didn't want to be there, probably.
No, we didn't.
The weather turned out. And so we go about our business, go home, go recruiting, all those kind of things. And at the end of recruiting, we're getting ready to start off season, downstairs in the mat room. And then we're ready getting our spring recruiting lined up and the board lined up and all those kind of things you take care of and all the housekeeping duties. And he said, "I want to meet with the defense as soon as this meeting's over." Well, he never said those kind of things, And so we all go in there and we sit down, and he starts talking about the bowl game and how bad we were. I don't even know what the score was. It wasn't.
I believe it was 17-14.
Was it?
Something like that.
Yeah. And he said, and he got up. He expounded on why he thought we played a bit poorly on defense. And he gets up, walks to the door. He doesn't open. He just grabs the handle and turns around and looks at all of us. And he said, "As long as I'm here, I don't want to ever see a defense play that poor you did." Hey, okay, we gave up 14 points, and but he had to get a message. What he was doing, and he was building for the spring. Mine, hey, we got a chance to be pretty good. If we get all our ducks in a row, we might have a pretty good football team next year. And that is exactly what he was doing. That was exactly what he was setting the tone for our staff room to get ready to have an exceptional spring practice.
Wally, let me interject something there.
Y'all gave up 383 yards that day, by the way.
That's a lot.
I guess he was right.
Yeah. I take those words back.
Well, back then that was a lot. These days it's a quarter.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, so think about what Coach Bowden had just been through before he had that conversation with y'all. I was there at that All-American Bowl, and there was a New Year's Eve party that night. And I remember Bernie Sliger, Andy Haggard, Andy Miller, Charlie Barnes, me, and I was, I wasn't with the boosters yet. I was Osceola guy. But the talk at the party, everybody huddled up, and the story was Bobby had been offered the Alabama job.
All right.
And, Steve Ellis, who, God rest his soul, met Coach Bowden the next morning in his Tallahassee home And Bobby was getting in the car to go to Alabama thinking he was going to accept the job. That's what and when he got up there, he walked into a room full of people, as he's documented on his film, the Bowden Dynasty era. And, he got in the room and it was an interview. I mean, they weren't there to offer him the job. And so he decided to come back to Florida State. So on that drive back, Wally, I think he was thinking about those 383 yards.
Yeah.
But, he had to know, because I knew, you guys knew, that we were going to be pretty special in 87.
Yeah, right. We did. And that's what I'm sure he probably did the same thing to the offense. I don't know that. We didn't tell him he got on us so hard. That was a secret.
I told a story before about when Charlie threw all those interceptions. We changed the offense after Brad and Casey left, and started out, when we had Amp and Brad and Casey, we were an I offense. And then when Charlie was going to be a junior starter, we converted to a more pro style offense with one tight end, one back. And, when you do that, quarterback's got to make checks at the line, 6 in the box, 7 in the box, and decide whether to run or pass. Well, Coach Bowden would always push back on that, because he always made the comment, I don't want an 18-year-old making decisions I've been making for 30 years. Right. But he acquiesced and he said, you know what? Yeah, we got to modernize the offense a little bit. So we put that offense. Well, the first 4 games, Charlie probably threw like 16 interceptions and
a bunch,
right? But our defense was so good, we were still winning games. But I'll never forget, after we played NC State, he threw four picks and we won the game. I think defense bailed us out again, and sitting in that meeting room, and he looks at Mark and Brad, and I'm sitting at the table with John Eason and Billy Sexton, and he goes, whose fault is it Charlie's throwing all these interceptions? He says, y'all coaching them. It's y'all's offense. Y'all get this right, or else I go back to the offense right here. We go back to the eye. And he did it. Everyone was okay. We got it right. And then, thank goodness we found the Charlie in the shotgun, and that changed everything. But man, if you can hear a pin drop, that's the first time probably I went, oh boy, he's really serious now, So,
yeah. The great news is we can continue these stories for a long, long time. I mean, he's given us so much to remember. I appreciate. We look forward to seeing everybody this weekend under unfortunate circumstances, but look forward to hearing more stories and sharing more laughs with you guys Friday and Saturday over the course of the weekend as we celebrate the life of Coach Bobby Bowden. But thank you guys for joining us. We are going to do a happy hour online Thursday at 6, and we're going to let former players and fans express their appreciation for Coach Bowden and use that on the Osceola. So if guys, you would like to join us, we'd love to have you back on Thursday night, even if for 5 or 10 minutes. Don't have to stay on the whole time. Whenever you can log on. But Tallahassee and Florida State is different because of Coach Bowden. Our lives are different because of the influence Coach Bowden had on all of us on this call, and sorely we missed, and prayers out to Miss Ann and all the kids as they go through a rather difficult week. But I want to thank you guys for joining us, and we hope that our listeners and Osceola subscribers enjoyed kind of more of an inside look at Coach Bowden and the impact he had on Coach Burnham and Jerry and Bill and Mark, and even to a lesser extent myself. But certainly a tough week in Tallahassee, and look forward to getting to where we get to laugh about him, and that's what he would want us to do. But thanks, guys, for joining us, and it's always special talking about Coach Bowden at any time. Loved hearing you guys share your stories, and we will be back next week on Seminole Sidelines podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you next week.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall. This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!